Good morning. This is RCB News, and I am Ryan Bolin. I want to get right down to the news at hand. I just want to talk a little bit on the situation with Larry Elder not getting the position of governor in California. Now, this is late news. I'm just not getting to it. A lot of guys, YouTubers, have already gotten to it. Mainstream news have already talked about it. But I want to give my spin on it and what I believe why he didn't win. Now, I believe he didn't win not because he didn't have a good campaign or anything like that. I think a lot of people knew Larry Elder. A lot of people liked him. I'm going to quote the words of Anthony Brown Logan, and I agree. It was a bipartisan, meaning that there were some Democrats that didn't want Newsom in office as well. So it wasn't just Republicans against Democrats, conservatives, Democrats against Republicans. I mean, there were both parties were trying to get Newsom out of there. So it's not about this group against that group. They all wanted him out of there. But I personally believe that the reason why he's still in office is because, number one, Gaven Newsom had a lot of backup. Gaven Newsom number one, he's a skilled politician. He's been in this thing for a long time. He knows how to persuade the people. Number two, he had a lot of backup. We all know that. He had a lot of financiers that were coming in at the rescue for him. They would, I think there were people, I believe, what's her name? The Vice President Kamala Harris. That's a shame I couldn't remember her name. Her name is not rememberable. She's not a person of memory. I can't, But I think she even endorsed him. And I think Biden may have endorsed him. But at any point, he had a lot of big names and big people endorsing him. And I want to mention this also. I was reading it, and I did this in a previous video. I was reading the tweets of some celebrities that were coming out and saying, vote no on the recall. Vote no on the recall. You had the comedian, I forget that comedian's name. He's a black comedian. You can look at my previous video and find that out. And I was reading their tweets, and they were saying vote no on this issue, this recall issue. They were calling Larry Elder the next another Donald Trump and all these type of things. And what happened, I believe, is that this mentality conditioned the people's minds to be like, okay, well, whatever you guys say, hey, I believe it. And I believe that the people had been conditioned to reject Larry Elder and to accept Gaven Newsom without any analyzing, any discernment, maybe there's a reason why he should be taken out of office. None of the people seem to push back at that. And I'm talking about the regular people, the normies. They didn't seem to push back about that. There was a video about a week or so ago that showed Larry Elder going through a homeless section, and a lady came up to him with a gorilla mask on, whatever that, I don't know what that meant. Was that a racist thing? Well, I don't know. She came up with a gorilla mask on, and I think it was said that she tried to throw an egg at him and missed him. But you going in a homeless section to try to help people that are homeless, and they don't want your help. And it actually infuriated me because I'm like, how in the world, homeless people going to reject a man that wants to help them? And this is what I came to the conclusion is that these people have been so conditioned to believe what they believe that when someone comes with a different agenda that's going to obviously help them, they reject it. They reject it wholesale. So I believe that the reason why Larry Elder didn't win wasn't because he didn't have a good campaign. It was because the people had been conditioned, or for lack of a better word, I'm just going to say it, brainwashed into rejecting Larry Elder and re-electing or voting no on the recall for Gaven Newsom. No one is asking the question as to, is he doing a good job or is he really helping this state? No one is asking that. And it really shows that people have it's almost like, and I'm going to read something to you in a minute. Yes, I read. Y'all know I read portions of the book because I don't want to misquote these words. But I'm going to read a quote from this book, and I'm going to tie this into what I believe is why the people reacted the way they reacted. But it's saddening to me because I work as a security officer at Cleveland downtown in Tower City, and the way the people are, it's almost like they're in a zombie state. A lot of the people, a lot of the civilians, not all of them, but I'd say 80% of them, it's like they're in a zombie state. They walk around on their phones all day. The people just, literally talking to themselves. And I'm not talking about, you talking to yourself because you being intellectual. We all talk to ourselves to some extent, but I'm talking about talking to themselves with sentences that don't match up with that don't make sense at all. It's like people are in like a trance state. And so that anything you tell them, they will believe it. And I personally believe that people have been conditioned to reject factual information. They've been conditioned to reject anything that's going to actually help them. That's why this goal to push certain conservative ideas to people is so difficult. It's like an uphill battle because people have been conditioned with so much leftist ideology that they don't know how to think. They can't rationalize anymore. They can't reason anymore. They're in a zombie state, a trance state almost, based on what I understand. So I want to read some quotes from a socialist or a supporter of socialism who wrote a book back in the 1950s. And the name of the book was The Impact of, I think the name of the book was The Impact of Science on Society. And I'm going to read some quotes from that book, from the author of that book. And these are the words of the actual author of that book. His name is Bertrand Russell. He was a socialist and a scientist, I believe, also during this era. And I'm going to quote some of his words in reference to how the way people think today. Think about how people think today in 2021. Think about how people think in America. Consider the way people seem to be so absent-minded about a lot of things. And when I read these quotes from this particular author of this book, I couldn't help but think, man, I'm seeing that right now. This is what he said. He said this in 1952. He said these words: I think the subject will be of most importance politically is mass psychology. Mass psychology is, scientifically speaking, not a very advanced study. This study is immensely useful to practical men, whether they wish to become rich or to acquire the government. It is, of course, as a science, founded upon individual psychology. But hitherto, it has employed rule of thumb methods which were based upon a kind of intuitive common sense. Its importance has been enormously increased by the growth of modern methods of propaganda. Of these, the most influential is what is called education. Religion plays a part, though a diminishing one. The press, the cinema, and the radio play an increasing part, end quote. And this is the words that he had said in 1952. Bertrand Russell said. Now, what's interesting about this is he mentions the press, the cinema, and the radio, because back in those days, TV hadn't come out TV was still relatively new in America. So TV hadn't been a real big issue, a real big tool by which to brainwash the masses of people into this idea. So, but he mentions the outlets that could be used, which was the press, the news, the cinema, and radio. Radio was big back then. You can condition people with propaganda through the radio. I want to read a few more of his quotes. He says, it may be hoped that in time, anybody will be able to persuade anybody of anything if he can catch the patient young and is provided by the state with money and equipment. This subject will make great strides when it is taken up by scientists under a scientific dictatorship. This is from his book, The Impact of Science on Society, on page 40. I'm going to read another one. When the government controls the distribution of food, its power is absolute so long as it can count on the police and the armed forces. And their loyalty can be secured by giving them some of the privileges of the governing class. I do not see how any internal movement or revolt can ever bring freedom to the oppressed in a modern scientific dictatorship. Page 66 of his book, The Impact of Science on Society. Now, this is interesting. He says, I do not see how any internal movement of revolt can ever bring freedom to the oppressed in a modern scientific dictatorship. What he's basically saying is these people will be oppressed, but if these people who are able to manipulate the minds of millions of other people, that they won't have any internal revolt to no internal desire to revolt against it. They won't have an internal desire to revolt against this mind control that is going on. He says, I do not see how any internal movement of revolt can ever bring freedom to the oppressed in a modern scientific dictatorship. You think about the word dictatorship, what comes to mind? A person like Adolf Hitler or Stalin or whatever, and you see it done in brutal ways. They use physical force to control the people. A scientific dictatorship is a dictatorship of the mind. Scientific dictatorship is you don't know who the dictator is. But the people in power are using the media, education, entertainment, and other forms to persuade and convince the minds of the people to accept a certain belief. This is what I believe was a situation in California with the masses of people. Propaganda. It was so much propaganda pushed towards these people by not only politicians, but celebrities who have influence on the minds of the people to not recall that election. I'm going to read something. I'm going to read another quote from Bertrand from his book. He says, it is to be expected that advances in physiology and psychology will give governments much more control over individual mentality than they now have even in totalitarian countries. Fitch laid it down that education, get this now, this is his word. He says, Fitch laid it down that, Fitch is, I guess, is another author. Fitch laid it down that education should aim at destroying free will, so that after pupils have left school, they shall be incapable throughout the rest of their lives of thinking or acting otherwise than as their schoolmasters would have wished. Get this now, before I read the rest of this quote. Education should aim at destroying free will. Now you look at this, what's going on in our schools today. The push and the indoctrination to accept communism and socialism and all of the and transgenderism and all these isms. The push to indoctrinate our youth with things that have nothing to do with real education, like math and history and science and the arts. What's going on here? I believe that what Bertrand Russell was talking about all the way back in 1952 is actually coming to pass right now. I'm going to read the rest of his quote. He says, diet, injection, and injunctions will combine. What I found out about the injections and injunctions, he's talking about vaccines. Vaccines, people. That's all I'm going to say about that. You just, these are not my words. These are his words. I'm just reading his words. He says, diet, injections, and injunctions will combine from a very early age, get them while they're young, to produce the sort of character and the sort of beliefs that the authorities consider desirable. And any serious criticism of the powers that be will become psychologically impossible. Even if all are miserable, all will believe themselves happy because the government will tell them that they are so. End quote. Page 62 of his book. Now you may say, what's that got to do with these people here in California? In my opinion, they've been conditioned. They've been dumbed down. They've been dumbed down, just like Bertrand Russell said in his book decades ago. They're not able to think clearly. They live in a miserable state of mind. They live in a miserable condition. Think about it. Homeless people throwing wanting Larry Elder to leave them alone. You're in a miserable condition, but yet here's a man that comes in to try to help you and you reject him. I believe that the reason why they rejected him is because they've been conditioned to accept their situation. And even though it's miserable, it will be impossible for them to push back against it. They'll believe they're happy. Bertrand Russell said, he says, they'll believe they're happy because the government says they're happy. Guess who the government is in California? The governor is Gaven Newsom. And I believe he has convinced them that you cool, you happy. You happy because I said you happy. You don't need to vote. You don't need to vote to get me out of office. You happy because I said you happy. Sad case, sad case. But I just wanted to make my comments. That's my opinion on this. And hopefully in the future, Larry Elder will be able to get some inroads there. But me personally, in my opinion, I wouldn't even bother to run again because in California, because California is purely Democrats. I don't have anything against all Democrats. Some Democrats are more moderate. But it seems to me that these are radical leftist Democrats who are pushing a horrible, destructive ideology and regime. And I would not try to run there. I may try to run somewhere else where there's an even balance. But he would have a hard time trying to win anybody over there. But I commend you, Larry Elder. Stay encouraged. Keep doing what you're doing, brother. I'm with you and I'm for you. Hey, listen, guys, if you have any comments about this video, please make your comments in the section. You know, if you agree with it, if you don't agree with it, make your comments known. Look, this is just how I agree. This is my opinion on it. I've quoted the words of Bertrand Russell in his book, and that's what he said. He was a socialist, and this is what he said. Those were his words. I'm quoting his words. You can look that up yourself. And I believe that's what I'm seeing today in our modern society. People have been brainwashed. They're under mind control. And I'll talk about this later in the future video. But if you guys have any comments, please make your comments known. Press the like button if you like this. Share this video and subscribe to this video. Thank you very much. And I'll see you again on RCB News. Be blessed.